They're leaning on these tools while they worldview saws off the branch that they sitting on and turn to. If there's no God, why treat morals like they're worth use? Why's nature predictable? Why's logic universal? Press that point hard and it folds. If reality's just atoms bouncing, how does this hold? There is no reason for the laws of thought to sunrise. It's just unwise to place your chips hoping for luck each time. Moral anti-realism shake you. Good and evil, relying on your preferences, that's crazy, bruh. You have no reason to rumbles, can't account for it. Make things up. The very tools that you use to argue against your God, they undo the things you do because you use them, ain't that odd? It's philosophical schizophrenicism running its course, borrowing coherence from Christians while denying its source. Your position eats itself from the inside. The only logical answer's a transcendent mind. Anything else is arbitrary. I can't relate, cause arbitrary can't hold up a debate. The impossibility of the contrary seals it. Without God, you cannot prove that anything that's real is. Barnes's core vibe is that proof itself. Logic, evidence, reason, presuppose, and order found only in God himself. If you deny him, you're blind and you're swinging in the dark. Logic's not a human creation or contingent on your thoughts. Brain fizz. Science already assumes that nature's uniform, but can't you see that blatantly that says that you are wrong? Duh. Why trust the law without a lawgiver? Morality hits us like it's absolute, it talks to you. Torture isn't just yuck, it's wrong objectively. Yet when we object without God, it's all subjective feelings. Naturalism stuck within a self-defeating loop that use God's absolutes to argue God's not absolute, which only serves to prove the point of Bonson, when every step they take just screams for God's existence. Your position eats itself from the inside. The only logical answer's a transcendent mind. Anything else is arbitrary. I can't relate, cause arbitrary can't hold up a debate. So tag's the knockout punch for Christianity. No other theory of the many can bring man to peace. The only worldview that holds it all together. God's rational mind grounds logic, his will aligns nature. His holy character defines the true morality. Every debate, every thought, and in every art we feel, it's all riding on his reality. Contrary, impossible, not just weak. It's incoherent naturalism. It's a house of cards. Moral anti-realism's a shrug, really has no cause. Without God, you're really just spitting to no beat, claiming the stage while the lights go out, it goes deep. Tag says he's the rhythm, the reason to rhyme. Everything flows from him, that's a truth that you can't hide. Tag says he's the rhythm, the reason to rhyme. Everything flows from him, that's a truth that you can't run and hide from. Your position eats itself from the inside. The only logical answer's a transcendent mind. Anything else is arbitrary. I can't relate, cause arbitrary can't hold up a debate. So tag's the knockout punch for Christianity. No other theory of the many can bring man to peace. The only worldview that holds it all together. God's rational mind grounds logic. His will aligns nature. His holy character defines the true morality. Every debate, all we feel, it's all riding on his reality. The contrary, impossible, not just weak. It's incoherent naturalism is a house of cards. Moral anti-realism's a shrug, really has no cause. Without, go out, it goes deep. Tag says he's the rhythm, the reason, the rhyme. Everything flows from him, that's a truth that you can't hide. Tag says he's the rhythm, the you can't hide. You can't.
Yo, Tag is goated, man. That is the goated argument. Okay, dude? Thank you. gotta call. I gotta text my buddy. Um, hey, penguins. Science is faith in the government, literally. Kinda. The way Jacques Ellul puts it is that modern man worships facts, essentially. But the problem is facts come with a lot of like opinions. They're not really facts. How do you put it? He said it in a different way, maybe like a more secular way than the way like me and Darth maybe put it all the time. What? Oh my god. No, I forgot what I was doing. What was I doing? Oh yeah. Now I remember. Um, Modern people are deeply confused because they can't tell the difference between reality and spin. In today's world, especially in media, politics, advertising, and even education, Ilul says people don't just give you facts anymore. They give you facts mixed with opinions, ideologies, and agendas. But it's hard to tell which is which. A headline might seem like news, but it's actually pushing a worldview. A scientific claim might be used to support a cultural or political belief, not just truth. A phrase like, the future of humanity is leisure, sounds like a fact, but it's actually someone's theory or wish. So we're in a fog, and many of the facts that we accept are actually just ideas being sold as truth. Um, so people today are confused because they can't tell the difference between truth and spin, or between real reality and just ideas and feelings. We take opinions and treat them like facts. We treat spirituality like it's just therapy. Like the only point of being a Christian is just to like help you with your addiction or help you with your depression. But there's more to it than that. While it does that, it's also like real. Like Jesus rose today, and we act like our feelings create reality. Yeah. So like all the atheists I talk to, right? They act like their feelings create reality. It's insane. They're like little mini gods. Their thoughts and feelings create reality. That's what they're all up their own butts about their own opinions all the time and how they define words.
Howdy doody.
Hey, what would you like to say?
I'm just curious why you think science is a theistic concept.
Because science relies on God to explain the fundamental parameters that would make science possible, like at a foundational.
What? So, like, what do you mean by that? Can you expound on that point? Like, can you give me a
Well,
specific example where that happens, maybe?
sure. So, like, math would be a pillar of science. Science
Mm-hmm.
relies on their math. So, math would prove God, right? Because
Huh?
without God, math would have no anchor or ground. It would just be an idea floating in the air. It would just be a concept. It wouldn't be real.
Wait, wait, I'm so confused. Like, how does that make it theistic, though?
Because Science relies on math, and math relies on God to be real.
So why aren't all mathematicians religious?
It doesn't matter. I'm not talking about like what a particular mathematician thinks, right? I'm talking
So we're
about.
not talking about mathematicians and what they believe. We're talking about what you believe.
I'm not talking about what anyone believes. I'm talking about what's a necessary truth in reality in the external world, not just a belief. I'm talking about facts. I'm talking about reality. So in reality, right? For math to be real in reality, not just opinion or belief, we would need the mind of God to make it real, or else it's just a floating idea.
Wait, why do we need God to make it real though? Like,
Because
how can we even say that when we can't measure using statistics that God exists? Like that, you're making an assumption, is what you're doing.
well, do you
You're
understand?
assuming that God created math. You're assuming it has to come from the mind, instead of you
Nah.
viewing the information you have in front of you. That's
Okay.
what I don't
So
understand. Like,
math
why are you jumping to conclusions?
math is like a concept or idea. It's abstract. It's not concrete.
No, it's not. It's real.
Where is the number one?
It's on my finger when I lift up one finger.
But not math.
When I have one blanket, when you have one guest on the panel.
Okay.
How many guests are on the panel right now, host?
Are you just like, are you really uneducated or are you lying? Because what I'm saying is
No,
not.
seriously, like how many? Answer this question. How many guests are on your live right now?
Okay,
How
you kind
many?
of, okay, what you
There's
said.
one, right? Or is
Hold
that
on a
fake?
second.
Or is there two people talking to you right now?
I'm gonna have to kick you if you can't relate.
Why?
Because you're out of control.
I'm not out of control. I was asking you a
Totally out of
question.
control. You're totally out of control. So what you said revealed your ignorance, right? Math would be an abstract or conceptual. It's not like something that exists in the physical world. So,
Huh?
do you want to like, you get that point?
No, it exists in the physical world. I just told you there's
Yeah,
one
but what
guest
I'm
in your
saying is
live, and it's
not
me.
controversial.
So
You're just uneducated on this matter. What I'm saying is
why can't you answer my question? I'm just answering.
math
I'm
cannot
trying to.
exist in the physical
It's
world
a
because math.
Socratic method.
Sir,
I'm just
sir,
asking a
sir,
question.
sir, mathematical truths are necessary. The physical world is contingent. What you're saying is foolish.
So
Now,
you're saying
okay,
one
sir,
doesn't
I'm gonna move
exist?
on because what you're completely, you don't know what you're talking about.
We can talk about something else, sir. I'm not being
No,
offensive.
no, you can admit you just lied and you don't know what you're
Admit
talking about.
what?
You can admit that, or it's just gonna move to another person.
What
So
do
what are
I?
you gonna
What
do?
do I not know?
Yeah, what do you not know? What do I know? I'm an atheist. I'm an atheist. Welcome.
What's up, Darth Clone?
What's up?
So I see you're still up here with the supposition that your God still exists, and you're running with everything is contingent and blah, 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 blah. So have you really seen God yet?
Bro, you can't be serious. So I make an
Well,
argument.
dude, what you're saying
Dude.
is off the charts crazy.
Okay.
Do you realize that?
What objective standard are you appealing to say it's crazy?
I'm not going to go down this path because
you're
you and
done.
Darth are,
And you're
are,
done.
are like
And that's how easy it is, folks. The atheism is a house of cards. Welcome.
Yeah, I just wanted to tell you that. So I'm in my junior year of my physics major, and you're completely wrong about math. Like I'm just gonna be straight up.
I'm
Like you have
wrong
no idea what
about
the fuck
math.
you're talking about.
Okay,
If you can tell me what the integral of x squared is, like maybe you
No.
can start talking math. But right now, you are not the person to be talking math.
Are you saying that math is concrete and it's not abstract?
It is a tag that is applied to physical objects. Numerical value cannot exist without
I'm not
physics.
hearing an
So,
answer to
like,
my question.
what you're not
Just-
realizing is the
All I'm
connection
hearing-
between
whoa.
math, physics,
I
and
didn't hear
engineering,
it. I didn't
which
hear
is
an
the
answer to
breach
my-
that most of humanity
didn't-
made
I
200
didn't-
years ago.
I didn't
So
hear
if you
an answer
can't
to my
realize that, you
question.
probably shouldn't be talking math. Unless,
I didn't-
again, you
I
want to
didn't-
tell
I'm
me
not
what the
hearing an
integral of
answer to
x
my
squared is.
question.
If you can
I
tell me
don't-
what the
I don't
integral of
hear
x
that.
squared is, maybe
Hello?
you can talk about math. But right now, you
Hello?
cannot talk about math.
I didn't hear an answer to my question.
Whoa, you can't do math. What's the integral of x squared if you want to talk about math?
Is math abstract? Yes or no?
No, it is not.
It's
No,
not
it is a
abstract.
tag that is applied to physical things.
Okay.
You're not realizing the connection between
Well,
math, physics, and engineering, which is something that the rest of humanity made that connection to.
You don't know what you're talking about. I'm not saying anything controversial. You are a crazy person. Welcome.
Hello.
Hello.
Can you prove Christianity to be objective?
Yes. With a transcendental argument for God. So, since God is a transcendental, we would have to prove a transcendental with a transcendental proof, which is we're going to say the Christian God is the necessary precondition for truth, reason, intelligibility, science, and without which, you would have no truth, reason, intelligibility, science. Therefore, the Christian God exists.
So, like, every single religion to ever be created uses that same argument, which is
No,
why you think every single religion is objectively true,
that's not
which is a
true.
contradiction.
No, only Christians use the argument. It's a argument for
Only Christians use that argument. You
correct.
swear by that?
What?
You swear by that?
Yes. You can't use the argument with any other religion.
So no religion has used the transcendental
No,
argument.
because only God has the revealed
That's
perfect
pretty
and
cool.
unique attribute set. So no other God has the attribute set of like Jesus, and the attribute set of Jesus is unique, revealed in history, and necessary for science, truth, reason, etc.
So, like, assumptions, right? Like, that's kind of your basis of your argument is assumption. Am
No,
I correct?
no. The argument has to do with metaphysical assumptions. So everyone has metaphysical
Yeah,
assumptions.
so you're assuming that, the Christian religion,
No,
that you have to believe a man died on the cross and was God and he rose for your sins from the dead and raised like 500 other people and all this stuff in the Bible has to
so
be
your-
true.
Oh, your creation
And you're
mythology.
just assuming all that.
What
Like,
are
bro.
you assuming? You're assuming there's a big bang, and then poof, monkey.
No one's assuming there's a big bang.
No, well,
what
listen.
are you talking about?
I mean,
You know what a theory is?
You say my creation mythology is like silly, but you think you're like a big banged monkey, and that's silly too. So don't start with me with like who believes like in
Okay, so you obviously deny
instant
evolution
evolved
then?
ape. All right,
You deny evolution. Just say it.
of course.
Of course. Okay.
And you believe that Earth used to just be
Wait.
rock.
Do you believe dinosaurs
Wait,
existed?
let me talk. You're making
Do you
fun
believe
of me.
dinosaurs existed?
Let me roast
buddy?
you back. Dude, let's have a back and forth roasting. all
Okay,
right?
yeah, buddy. Do you believe
Just let me-
dinosaurs
let
existed?
me-
Go ahead.
Can you just let me talk? Because think about your belief, right? You think the
Oh,
Earth
wait.
is-
Or did humans
Okay.
exist before dinosaurs? Is that what you believe? Because that's what the Bible said.
And this, it won't even let me talk. I'm not even allowed to talk because atheism, because there's no rules, right? It's anarchy. Atheism is anarchy. There's no order. And that's why they act like that. Welcome.
Hi.
Hi.
So I want to give a little bit of my background first because I think that's fair. So hi, my name is Thrash. I was raised evangelical Christian, and when I was in college, I converted to Judaism. I am an anthropologist who studies evolution and other science-based things around humanity. So I would love to talk to you about evolution specifically, if that's what you're okay with.
Well, but the problem is, I'm not really into science. I don't really know anything.
Okay, so your number 5 point literally is science. So I think you are arguing about things you're not qualified for and are backing down because you're being presented with someone who has an objective and rational point of view.
I don't argue scientific claims. I'm arguing about like the philosophy of science. I'm not
Your
arguing.
philosophy's pretty piss poor too, considering your claim for how God is objectively proven is that you think God is objectively proven, and because you think that, you have logic, so God is real.
No,
But
I'm
the
saying-
thing is, I believe there's an
not the
octopus
argument.
that's living in your skull, and it's
not the
making you
argument.
say these things, and because you're saying those things, I'm right, and there's an octopus in your skull.
You're not being charitable. The argument is that like if humans don't have God to aid our reason, you couldn't explain something like the principle of the uniformity of nature, which all scientists would need.
Okay, can I ask you a question? Do you think animals are inherently religious?
No.
Okay, so if you've seen a dog before, if I put a treat under a box and then show it to a dog, and the dog uses logic to flip over the box, does that mean the dog is a Christian now?
Yes. That means the dog is a Christian.
Okay, so. Oh, buddy. Is this a fetish? Is this why you're barking? Is this a fetish thing?
So you kind of ignored my answer, right?
No, I need to know why you're barking at a random woman, because if you're using me for fetish content, I would like to know about it.
Dude, stop being weird. I made an argument, right?
You started barking like a dog. You're the one that made this weird. We're gonna keep on this point until you can explain why you barked like a dog into your microphone when you're a grown-ass adult.
Well, because I was like making fun of like atheism, because like.
Okay, so you barked like a dog because that's you making fun of atheism. Cool.
Because it's like you believe.
So I'm gonna meow and make fun of Christianity next. I'll keep that in mind.
You believe you're like genetically related to a dog, right?
I believe all living creatures are genetically related. Yes. If you go back far enough.
There you go. There you go.
So that means it makes sense why you barked?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Does that mean you can start talking in a British accent if you're I'm so confused what any path of logic that you're trying to use is just so convoluted and confusing.
The dog is my first cousin.
Okay, if your parents had sex with a dog. Okay, if your parents had sex with a dog, that's your thing. Again, that's not what the argument is, and I think you're just deflecting.
Whoa. That was rude. Welcome. She never answered my question, by the way. Welcome.
Yo. Oh shit. Oh.
Exactly. This is atheism. Welcome.
Hi, how are you doing?
I'm doing well.
Good. Hope my connection doesn't patch out here. I disagree with the prompt. I don't think that gods are real. I think that man made them.
Okay, but if God's not real, then when I'm looking at a tree and there's no God, so then what would make the tree real?
You think external reality isn't real?
Well, for something to be actual, it would need to be actualized. So what would actualize the tree? That's not God. So I feel like if you say my God's not real, then now nothing is real because nothing can make anything real.
Okay, well then, just to clarify, when you define God, what are you defining it as? Because it would have to be something to do with Christianity.
God is the single causal first principle that dictates all states of affairs, what is, what can, what cannot be, what's possible, impossible, what's necessary, what's contingent.
Is it conscious?
Yes, his rational mind would ground logic, and his will would ensure that nature is consistent, and his holy character gives us absolute moral values.
Okay, well, I mean, you're free to believe that. I think that we can acknowledge external reality without acknowledging our God. I know I sure do every day. And you can definitely ground morals without a God. That is an outdated, false thing.
But you'd be in a world of ultimate mystery, so you could never really make any claims about reality, because your whole life would be a fantasy without God.
No, there are certain things you can know. Like you can know the basic fundamentals of like the gravity of this planet just by like throwing a rock or something. Whereas something that's going to take a lot longer is something that's a lot farther away, like stuff in our solar system.
You couldn't even know that though, because you could be like in the Matrix and it's all like a simulation and none of that is real.
Yeah, but there's not really any reason to think that. But either way, you are acknowledging an external reality that you would live in.
You can't defeat skepticism, and I can. So
Actually, I'm arguing more for doubt and skepticism than you are.
no, I'm saying we humans cannot defeat skepticism, so that we need to reason with the aid of God, and that's where revelation comes in. So without revelation, you couldn't reason. Therefore, there's a God. So when you're using logic to argue against me, you have to assume God exists, because logic wouldn't exist without God.
No, logic and reasoning comes from rational minds, which it comes from us.
No, that's impossible. Because human minds are contingent and logic is a necessary truth. So that's a contradiction.
All right, well, God, okay, not even talking about God right now. That's beside the point. What about just acknowledging an external reality through your senses?
It would end in absurdity, because that'd be like some type of empiricism, but empiricism is a contradiction.
Well, just for some clarity here, to subscribe to Christianity, you typically read a book. You read the book, how? It's through your senses. You see it, you touch it, you can feel it, it's there.
Okay, and
I mean, it's ridiculous to say that you can't even acknowledge anything without a God if you're just using your senses.
But where did you use your senses to decide we ought to use our senses to discover truth?
It's just like okay.
So you're smuggling.
Your senses are kind of like an innate thing. You can't really turn them off.
Stop. Even when you talk about using your senses, you're smuggling in like claims that don't rely on your senses.
When you talk about an object God, you smuggle in a lot of claims.
That's not a defeater for God, because God's the ultimate self-contained, non-derivative, non-dependent explanation for everything. And if you don't have something like that in your system, you have absurdity and incoherence.
You're free to believe that. Could I ask you some questions?
It's not about my belief. It's just a logical entailment of your position.
You are free to believe that. It's still a belief. Could I ask you some questions? Flip this back on you.
You have to assume the belief when you say it's a belief. When you talk, you have to assume the belief. You couldn't talk without that belief.
Right. No, we can talk because we evolved from social animals, which evolved from other animals.
If the world was random and everything was random and there was no patterns in the world, could you talk?
Who said it's random? There's clearly laws everything goes upon.
So why isn't it random? Why is it consistent? That's
laws
God.
of the universe.
No.
Inherent necessities of this reality maybe spawned from an interdimensional phenomenon echoing outwards through our perceptions. But hey, it has nothing to do with a God in that explanation.
Okay, well, no, I just proved it because you just had to lie, because the only answer to that question is God. So you guys trying to answer?
Again, you could define that a plethora of ways, but you talk about God.
You just lied. No, I just want to point. Can you acknowledge that? Can you just acknowledge that when I ask why is the universe consistent and there's patterns, you have to lie because there's no answer to that other than God?
There is clearly laws in the universe. Depending on how you define God, I could agree with you that they come from a God. Whenever you define it as a biblical God, it's not true.
Look, dude. This is your option, because I'm not going to sit here and have you lie and bullshit me. So the only answer to that question is God.
Lie. I'm just stating my opinion.
I'm going to ask this question. The only answer is to God. And it's if you answer anything else.
That's your opinion. You're free to have it. We're just having a discussion.
It's not my opinion. It's the truth. The only answer to the question, why is the universe consistent, is because the will of God wills it to be consistent. There's no other answer. So are you going to lie and say there's another answer?
No, there are other answers.
You're a liar. Ain't no fallacy up here. I'm straight shooter. And then he requests up again. I don't want to talk to you, man, if you're just going to lie. Oh, this guy's not connecting.
I would just like to know how old you think the life of this planet is.
1,000 years.
That explains a lot.
Laugh it up. You're going to hell. Laugh it up now because you're going to hell, okay? And get some aloe vera because you
At
might
least if I'm not there with you and they know how to jam.
Yeah, it's so funny. That joke's gonna go over well when you're burning. in
I'll
hell.
take it up with the Lord at the pearly gates. I have no fear of you. I'll take it up with him since he's so, unbiased, and I'll take it up with him, not you.
Whose ultimate choice is it to go to hell? I know you're not mute.
What's the meaning of life?
We give life meaning. Whose ultimate choice is it to go to hell?
So there is no meaning of life. So why are you even here arguing?
People find a lot of joy in their family.
There's no purpose to your life. Nothing matters. There's no meaning.
Dude, everything you're saying is a fallacy and illogical. You just said that the world is 1,000 years old, but Jesus, by record, is over 2,000. Okay?
So maybe there's this thing called irony, right?
No, that's not ironic. That's just being stupid.
Are you sure about that?
I'm pretty positive.
Okay. Well, how
You're
do you
just speaking. You can't appeal to God to prove God. That's a fallacy. That's called circular logic.
Okay. So,
what is your evidence for God without appealing to the Bible or God himself?
Well, you're making a claim now that it's faulty to use circular reasoning to prove God? Is that what you're saying?
You cannot use a circular statement to prove anything because a circular statement is essentially a non-statement. That's like saying all men are men. That doesn't state anything.
Let's see if you can defend that claim. So,
you defend the claim that you're using circular logic. You're appealing to God to prove God.
But you're saying that it's faulty to use circular reasoning to prove God. But I think we should examine that because I would reject that, right?
Of course you reject it. You don't understand what logic is.
Okay, can we examine that, your logic? Can we examine your logic or not? So
if you want to examine logic, let's look up the Epicurean paradox.
Okay.
Which proves that your God is a contradiction.
So you're not going to cooperate?
You mean, am I going to go on a rabbit hole of nonsense and illogical statements with you? No. If you're going to answer my questions, then I'll stay.
I can hear the fear in your voice.
Look up the Epicurean paradox.
I'm not interested.
Your God.
I'm not interested. You
Obviously,
made a claim.
because you're not interested in real knowledge. You're interested in a circular logic that only appeals to God to prove it.
Okay, but you're making the claim that circular logic, when it comes to proving God, is faulty. So I want to examine that reasoning. Now,
Go for it.
Okay, is it not the case that if God exists, God would create all facts and interpret all facts?
Again, you're appealing to God to prove God.
Again. So
you can't do that. That's illogical. You should take a logic and reasoning class.
Let's examine your logic. Is it the case that facts are created or uncreated? Yes.
No, facts exist and we discover them.
Created.
Facts exist regardless of discovery. They are there whether or not you know it or not.
The facts are created by God or they're not created by God.
You're just appealing to God more, dude. Can you have a single line that doesn't appeal to God to prove anything?
Facts are created by God or not created by God. What's the other option?
The other option is that facts exist independent of God because God doesn't exist and you can't prove it.
So that would be in one of the options. Are you even listening to me?
You don't get to set out what the options are and then say anything out that isn't an option.
You're being really unreasonable. That is highly unreasonable. Highly unreasonable. I tried to reason with him. I was very patient with him. That was a highly unreasonable flat earther. Welcome.
I want to drink the blood of Jesus right from his veins.
Oh, that's edgy. That's really cool. So, do you
it's about as edgy as your bullshit that's up here.
Okay. Why should I be an atheist?
Drink the blood of Jesus. Drink it right from his veins.
What's the evidence for atheism?
What's the evidence for any of the bullshit that you're talking about other than the circular reasoning?
Again, so are you saying circular reasoning?
Circular reasoning, bro. Bro, you throw out fallacies, circular reasoning, and you literally start from supposition. Like, you are the worst at this. So you need to go suck more blood from Jesus's veins.
Would you agree that facts are created or not created?
Like the last guy said, facts are beyond that. They just exist.
What's the third option? Well, that would be not created. So you agree, facts are created or not created? You agree?
You need more of the Jesus blood.
So facts are created or not created, correct?
Your way of logic is like straight suckling off of Darth Dawkins' sack, dude. And it's sad. Like, this is what incels sound like. Listen, everybody. Listen to the host. This is what incels sound like. This is what people get bored because they don't have any of the
Is that word going to get me banned? I don't know if that word is going to get me banned. You can request back up, but I mean, man, you're not really being very mature.
Okay, thanks for having me up. So I am curious about your whole idea that logic is created by God.
You're curious about that. Well, what else would be the other option? I don't.
I'm not too interested in talking about the other options. What I'm interested in is whether you can use God to derive one of the statements of logic. Are you able to do that?
Not sure what you mean. So when we're talking about grounding logic, we're talking about God grounds or anchors logic, because logic has these properties like absolute, eternal, universal, unchanging.
Yeah, okay, but I have something a bit more concrete in mind. So say, for instance, the statement that if A equals B and B equals C, then A equals C. Can you derive that statement from your belief? Because if it's grounded in God, then you should be able to, right?
I'm not really sure what you're saying, so I'm kind of confused. It's
Okay,
just
so we have a statement that if one thing equals, you understand that statement.
Okay.
Cool. Now you insist that all logic is created by, derived from, imposed by, whatever you want to call it, by God. So can you derive that statement from your belief in God?
Okay. So sure, we would need like the law of identity. So to have a law of identity, we need something that's like absolute, unchanging, and can limit the states of existence.
That's not what the law of identity is. The law of identity is that in any set of operations, there is a value which does not change another value in that operation.
And that presupposes an absolute identity statement to impose and secure the identity of any state, like entity, state of affairs. So,
cool. So to cut to the point here, host.
That would be. So hello.
Yeah, I'm listening. I'm listening.
So if you reject that, then what's the absolute identity statement that is the necessary precondition for the law of identity so that you can have logic?
Well, I'm not convinced that you've argued to that point yet. So where do we have to go to?
Excuse me. You're using logic, and as far as I'm concerned, that's God's tool. So how are you using God's tool to say God doesn't exist? Do you see the contradiction?
No, I'm asking you, how do you get to that tool from God?
I just told you. God's rational mind. God's rational mind is the ground of logic, because God is concrete and he has the properties necessary to ground logic.
Okay, so how do we get from God's mind to logic? Could you walk me through that?
Yes, so logic has properties like it's absolute, unchanging, universal, eternal. It also is like it's a morally binding, prescriptive. So God, his holy character, can provide the ought, like you ought to follow modus ponens. God's like, because he's unchanged, he has all the properties that would be needed to, and he's concrete, he can make logic real. So when we talk about logic, there's a concrete reference to the mind of God. Whereas if you deny that, what would make logic real? That's not God.
Okay, so let's give you that. Let's assume that that's true.
Let's not.
How do you go from?
Wait.
No. I'm happy to concede that. That's fine.
No, we're not gonna give me that because I just proved Christianity. Now you have a burden. How are you using logic without the mind of God? Okay.
So I know you're trying to change the conversation because it's uncomfortable not to be able to explain this.
You're just bullshitting me, dude.
See, you want to come up here and use logic, but then you use my God's logic, and then you tell me, oh, I'm uncomfortable? You're using my God's logic. Explain yourself. And you guys never answer any of these questions. You're being a little man. You're acting like a child. You have to defend your position. This is a debate. I'm not granting you shit. I'm not granting you anything. To debate, there has to be a consistent nature to the world. Well, that's explained by the will of God. He imposes the consistency in the world. To debate, you're going to need to be rational. God's rational mind would ground logic, so you can be rational. To debate, you're going to need a normative framework. God's holy character provides an objective normative framework, so I can say, you ought listen to my argument. You ought believe true things instead of false things. How are you even debating, dude, without God? You're goofy. These people put on these clown makeup and they show up to the debate and they act like clowns. It's crazy. Every time. It's so easy to prove God too. It's just that they're stubborn and they suppress the truth and unrighteousness. Because I'm looking at a tree right now, right? Why is the tree real? What makes the tree real? What actualizes the tree so the tree is actual? What limits the properties of the tree? What limits the states of existence of the tree so the tree has a limit to its state of existence? If the tree has no limit to its state of existence, why isn't it turning into like an elephant or a bush or maybe just an apple tree? It's staying and it's maintaining identity over time. How's that possible without God? The world doesn't make any sense without God. It's so duh. You guys act like, oh, tag is dumb. Ugh. Bad argument. It's ridiculous. Van Til says you're like, to argue against God, you're sitting on the branch of a tree, sawing the branch off, like claiming the tree isn't real. It's ridiculous. I mean, think about it. All I have to do is look at the tree. Why is it real? What's another way to put it? Oh, Van Til would say, what presupposition makes a fact true? Why is any state of affairs the way it is? Why does it maintain that identity over time? Why are things consistent? Why are there patterns? It's just like, duh, God. How does that make sense if everything's just what? Random chance? There's no intention. There's nothing guiding anything to be connected to anything else. Then why are things connected? The very language we use betrays God's existence because we talk about the world as if they're unified descriptions of reality, or we talk about past, present, and future tense. Well, where's the past? When you make a truth claim about the past, what's the referent to that? I went to the store yesterday at 2 p.m. Where's that state of affairs that makes that proposition true? Where does the past exist? Wouldn't we need a transcendent mind of God as a referent point to talk about the past? How could you make any truth claim about? There'd be nothing to make that truth claim. So like when we make a truth statement, you have the proposition, which is how does this work? There's truth bearers and there's truth makers. So a proposition is a truth bearer. It's just a statement that is it like a truth value. And again, the word value, it's a truth value. A truth value, so that requires value. Again, that's morals, ethics, value. So you have a truth bearer, it's a statement that has a truth value, and then there's a truth maker. The truth maker is the thing that makes the bearer, I guess, true. So if I say the cat is on the mat, that's the truth bearer, and the statement would be the truth bearer, and then the truth maker would be like the external world state of affairs that is a cat on the mat. Like there is a cat in the mat in the reality, and that's the truth maker. So, and where the hell was I even going with this? I guess I think I was talking, I can't even remember my original point. I think we were talking about logic. So the mind of God is like the truth maker for logic. And so without God, it's like, what would make logic true? Like what state of affairs in the external world makes logic true? There is none in the physical world. Just like for the past. Oh, I was talking about the past. Yeah, so like there would be no state of affairs in the past in the physical world because that doesn't exist. They might try to argue like a B theory of time, but Darth will say B theory of time contradicts. B theory of time is this idea. So A theory of time is the idea of like presentism, that all there is the present, and that the past doesn't exist, and that the future is an abstraction. And then there's B theory of time, which is that all time exists at the same time, and it's just our perception of time, and there's like time slices. And it's just our perception of time, and there's like time slices. So in B theory of time, there would be a referent to the past, but the problem is B theory of time ends up to be like really contradictory. Because in B theory of time, like Abraham Lincoln would be alive and unalive at the same time. So that's a contradiction. It doesn't really map onto reality. Because in reality, there's no contradictions. Things don't exist and not exist at the same time in reality. So yeah, the atheist model, like their language betrays God at every step. When they talk about past, present, future tense language, that assumes a metaphysics. So where is the past? We can say it's in the mind of God. So I went to this store yesterday at 2 p.m. It's true. The truth maker is the mind of God that has that like correct thinking about the world in its mind. And the mind is concrete. The mind isn't, even though God's mind is immaterial, which is kind of weird, I guess, because typically when we say concrete, we think physical or material, and that's going to be the case 99% of the time. But it's not always like, so God, there are immaterial things, a part of reality that we would say are real, like math, logic, what else? Morals, love, beauty. So there are immaterial realities. The atheists want to like ignore those and like reduce them all to chemicals or something. It's like, it's utter nonsense. And then they go, oh, you have the crazy view. No, you think love is a chemical. Oh, hi, sweetheart. I chemical you so much, you know. Oh, I had a dinner with all these bags of chemicals, you know, and it feels like I've known these bags of chemicals for a long time, and you know, my chemicals really like those chemicals. And I mean, what kind of world is this? You know, I'm just an evolved ape, but I kind of feel like it's wrong to lie. I mean, not really. It's like a fantasy, obviously, because I'm just an evolved ape. But you know, it seems like lying is bad or something, and that's preferable apparently to just believing Jesus is real and Jesus makes lying wrong. I don't get it. George Bernard Shaw. I read an article where he was saying that, like, well, this was like 100 years ago, so I don't know. He would say that science makes more like miraculous claims than the Bible, like having us believe that there's this microscopic world of electrons and all this stuff, and then also these huge like stars and black holes and all this cosmic crap. Like, so it's not as if science doesn't have, I guess, things that, like, imagine you went back in time 200 years and try to tell someone like black holes exist. They would think you're like the most goofy, like, moron ever. They would laugh at you. And so now we accept black holes, right? And it's not like it's more rational to believe in it or something. Like, it's just that what society deems as like correct thinking changes. But when you take it out of its time period, it's like everyone thinks it's lunacy. So, like, when we think about how people thought 2,000 years ago, we think that they were crazy because we're so modern, we're so better. But why should our thinking about the world, why should our creation mythology of like the Big Bang and that we're involved monkeys, why is that the correct creation story? I don't know. I think we just like assume that humanity's always making progress because it's modern, because it's new, therefore it's better. But I don't think that's necessarily the case. I think we should look to the ancients for wisdom because I think they had a lot of advantages because the ancients didn't grow up in this world where like science and technology is used to dumb people down. What the heck? Like, think about when you read some of the writing of the founding fathers, or people had like amazing penmanship 200 years ago, and they would use like big words, and we kind of just like grunt at each other. Like, people were really poetic and eloquent when they spoke, and nowadays people just kind of grunt at each other, and everyone's got like a 5-second attention span. Or if like you watch a sitcom or a movie from the 50s, they treat you like you have an attention span that's longer than 5 seconds. If you watch a movie today, it's like bam, bam, bam. Everything's so fast paced because they've like trained our attention span to like drop. And they do that with like entertainment and education and media, politics. So everything has to be in sound bites. So when I try to do tag, I think it's best to do it in like 5-second sound bites because people have no attention span. What's up, Astro?
Hello again. So I wanted to discuss the second point with you. It's unrelated to what we were talking about before, so don't worry.
Okay.
So would you agree with me that computers are things which use logic?
So computers they have syntax, but they don't understand semantics. So they don't understand the meaning of words. They just understand input output. So they don't really think or anything.
Well, that's okay. It doesn't have to think to do logic. All I mean is they can do logical operations, like 1 + 1 = 2.
No.
You don't agree with that?
Well, they're programmed to do syntax, input output. They don't think abstractly. Humans think abstractly.
No, I actually they can do maths before they have any programming.
What are you talking about?
Well, just a simple CPU without any programming loading onto it can do binary logic. Like that's a thing. You understand that, right?
I don't know what you're talking about.
Okay, well the point I'm trying to make here is computers can do logic. And computers most
because they're programmed
yes.
by logical beings.
Okay, this isn't going to work then, is it? Because you're ignoring that fact. Okay. So you say then that, or your fifth point, I'll go to that instead. You're saying science is a theistic concept. What does that mean to you?
That science is only possible if God exists. That if atheism was true, you couldn't do science.
Okay, so I am a scientist. It's my day job.
I bet.
At what point?
Everyone I talk to is a PhD scientist. It's amazing.
Well, you clearly attract the right audience then. So at what point during my research do I need to use God?
Well, all of science is based off the principle of the uniformity of nature. So you have to assume the principle of uniformity of nature, and that comes from the Bible.
Okay, so that doesn't exactly answer my question. So I'm writing it.
It does exactly answer your question. You, as a scientist, need to assume the principle of the uniformity of nature to do science. Every scientist has to do this. So, where do you get
Cool.
that?
So could you refer me to the paper? Could you refer me to the paper then, which mentions God? Just one scientific paper. That would be helpful.
I'm not saying that science proves God. I didn't make that claim. I'm telling you that.
No,
science...
you're saying that science needs to use God.
Are you not listening to me? You're not listening. Are you?
I'm listening.
Don't worry. Now I don't believe you're a scientist. Now I think you're lying to me because you're acting like a child. So science has foundational beliefs. One of those foundational beliefs of science is the principle of the uniformity of nature. You should know that. So it's called the problem of induction because there's no empirical evidence for the principle and there's no rational evidence for the principle, yet science relies on the principle. So that's where you need God in the Bible to explain how you can use the principle or where it comes from and all that.
So if that's true, then someone out there must have referred to God in one of their papers at some point, surely. So what's the name of this paper?
How does that follow, you cheeky bastard?
Well, scientists write down their methods so they can be reproduced. That's kind of a very, very important point.
You are a smug, condescending, arrogant dumbass.
Oh, there's no need to get angry about it. We can have a matured.
Ooh! I'm an idiot. That guy's a liar. Yeah, Schizo Socrates. If you subscribe to that account, you're going to hell. No, Astro, because you act like you're being a liar. I mean, I don't want to sit here and be lied to, and then you're like preaching some nonsense. You don't know what the hell you're talking about. Good boy. And you lying about being a scientist. Oh my God. Welcome.
Well, I agree with everything.
Okay, well I'm looking for like opposition.
No problem.
What?
No problem.
All right, man. Well, he could figure out how to leave. That atheist couldn't even figure out. He didn't evolve the trait to. He didn't know how to leave the panel. On that clip I did on my band account. All my arguments are from ChatGPT. Even if they are, why does that matter? That should be easier to defeat them. I would debate ChatGPT, right? I've done it. I asked ChatGPT, I go, be an atheist and debate me. And then I debated it and I won. So if you want to bring your you can make your atheist ChatGPT and it can debate my Christian ChatGPT. And we'll see whose ChatGPT wins, okay? Read it where? Is this reading it? What the fuck? Is it on here? Oh my God. Yeah, I'll let you up.
I have a quick question. If Christianity is real, why did churches segregate during the 60s?
What's that?
If segregation is, if churches are like morally good, why did they segregate during the 60s and all through segregation? Why were churches so, like, why did they honor segregation?
Well, like black people wanted to segregate from white people. Like,
You're so delusional and you're a freak. Stay away from life. I hope you kill yourself. Ugh.
Okay, this is atheism. So there's something called the Black Methodist Church, right? And what had happened is the white Methodists or whatever you want to, they welcomed anyone, like black people were welcome in the Methodist Church. But then there was a group of black people that wanted to segregate, and they created their own like special black church called the Black Methodist Church. So that's an example of the blacks, like, well, I shouldn't say it like that, but black people willingly wanting to segregate themselves. And so is that wrong? I don't know. So this guy tried to debate my bot. You know, there's an interesting speech. Actually, maybe we should listen to it. I think it's TikTok. Hopefully it's TikTok friendly. What is it called? Gosh, what was that guy's name? I'm trying to think of that guy. I know I have it. Here, let me check. If I play this, I'll probably get freaking banned for racism. Actually, I shouldn't play it. Yeah, that's probably a bad idea. Actually, never mind. It's like there's a black guy who was a part of the civil rights, and then he realized like he didn't like the civil rights movement, and he talked about a lot of the corruption in it. But then he lost his life shortly after that. I don't think there's any conspiracy to him losing his life, but it's just unfortunate. Where was it? I had it saved somewhere. Was it here? Oh no, I think it was this one. Yes. Man, did I write the guy's name? Oh, I didn't write the guy's name. Crap, I can't remember the name. What was his name? Now this is gonna drive me crazy. I need to put his name in here. Oh, I remember. It was Manning Johnson. Yeah, look up YouTube on a speech by a guy named Manning Johnson. It's pretty interesting. Yeah, I wrote down some of the notes from his speech. He said that even like the African American community has a caste system where like rich African Americans probably don't really associate with like
poor African Americans, for example, right? So that's he would say it's like hypocritical when they talk about segregation because they like segregate among themselves. There's also like some racism between like, isn't there like, depending on the shade of skin color or something, there's like people that are judgmental about that within the community. So he says that like the problem of people wanting to segregate is like just something that's always a part of society. He said some socialist propagandist wrote a book that the only way to get equal education is when the children sit by each other. But that's nonsense because it doesn't matter who you sit beside, it matters how hard the student works. And I guess there was an idea back then that like African Americans were oppressed to like be uneducated or something. But he said that that's just an excuse to like not work hard and like learn. Because like you can just go to the library and learn and stuff. Oh, and he talks about how like some of these organizations, like they make profit off of the idea that certain minorities are oppressed. And if you have this organization that profits off a minority being oppressed, like you're making more money the more oppressed people are. So it creates this contradiction, right? Where you're working to fight oppression, but if oppression didn't exist, the organization wouldn't exist. And the organization's making lots of money. So you see there's like a conflict of interest there, where it actually benefits these organizations for there to be more oppression. And he says you can't force people to integrate, that you have to let people integrate naturally. And so he's actually kind of against forcing people to integrate. And that makes sense to me. I don't think we should legislate that people be friends with each other. I think you have to just let that happen naturally. And he talks about, it's like this, a lot of like Marxism, this idea of oppressor-oppressed relationships. But I think in Christianity, we can kind of like, as a Christian, it doesn't matter if I'm oppressed because I have Christ. So, like, to a Christian, your social status, whether you're oppressed or not oppressed, your social status shouldn't really matter to you. All that matters to you is God and Christ, your Savior. But today, people are really obsessed with oppressor-oppressed relationships. He starts talking about some conspiracy of like from Russia in this speech. He talks about before integration that the segregation forced people to be more autonomous, like. And after integration, it's like you have to depend on the power structure, the oppressive power structure. So it's like better. It's almost better off when you kind of had to be autonomous and had to do your own thing. So, anyways, I thought that he made some interesting points, but that was way back in the 60s. He's saying this stuff during the civil rights movement. That's the guy's name's Manning Johnson, and I think he wrote a book called Color, Communism, and Common Sense is the book. But there's a speech of his on YouTube. I thought it was a good speech. Those were my notes from the speech. See what else could I do. Probably should eat pretty soon. I could do some reading, I guess. What time is it at? An hour? More subtle procedures may also be seen. Thus, spirit can be integrated into the real as though it were a natural dimension of it. This is a temptation for both Christians and non-Christians. Again, spirit can be utilized as though it had the task of offering solutions to the problems and difficulties caused by encounter with the real. Or it is argued that since we can grasp the real only through our own experiences and images and mental universe, the real has no reality. Distinction between subject and object must thus be obliterated in the sense that the object is only part of the subject, and not in the true sense that the object exists only in relation to the subject and vice versa. So what he's talking about here is what we talk about in tag, is that there needs to be a subject and an object, but they haven't, without Christ, you have no objective reference point. So everything becomes this, it's just a subjective reference point. So finally, Christians theorize that the form according to which everything can have a concrete material aspect in the Bible is a deformation of the truth, for it gives expression to our illegitimate attachment to material signs such as the miracles or the bodily resurrection of Jesus, a full-blooded spiritualizing. Now, the accusation might be made that I am dismissing these views too summarily. Complex and powerful thoughts are being summarized incorrectly. There is truth in this. I am listing the trends that I oppose only to call them to mind, not to discuss them. It is my belief that all of these intellectual attitudes, which are always presupposed and never proved, prevent us from taking seriously the action situation of man and his conflict and ambiguity. So he's he's talking about being practical, and that the intellectuals are idealistic. Realism implies a rejection of every systematic explanation of the world, whether doctrinal or general. A global system, whether it be Christian, idealistic, or materialistic, necessarily leads at some point to the denial of reality. No system can embrace the totality of known facts, whether in Aristotle's time or our own. This is shown by the extremely limited character of Aristotle's experience in the sphere of politics. Similarly, a system of global explanation like that of Marx is erroneous precisely because it tries to be global. The criticisms of Bernstein and Searle are worth noting in this regard, since they are offered from a Marxist standpoint. Realistic systems, however, are equally mistaken. One might refer, for example, to those which think they can present an accurate view of the world by the application of an exclusively quantitative or statistical method. But spiritual and qualitative elements are also facts, and these cannot be reduced to statistical form. When all that surrounds us is taken into account, no logical and coherent system of explanation is possible. Only partial systems of relations and contradictions exist. The only thing is that man has to have a system of interpretation, for he needs to give coherence to the world. This is actually pretty profound. Oh, I want to read this. I'll read this debate later. Oh my god, this guy's... What is this shit? I don't think religion really does that much damage. I think that's kind of like crazy to say. Think about all the damage that atheism did in the 20th century. It's crazy. Unalived millions of people. Hey, what's up, Darth? This is what welcome.
Yeah. Hey man, I have a few questions before we even debate anything. Isn't the whole concept of Christianity that you'd have faith on your God? So you wouldn't actually have to be proven.
Faith is a synonym for belief. Okay,
Yeah.
belief,
Yes,
trust,
but
confidence.
if it's subjectively
Faith does
proven,
not
it's not a
believe
belief.
something, does not mean. Okay, sir, listen to me. You do not know what you are talking about. The word faith
That's
is
why I asked
used
you.
as a synonym for. I'm answering you. Okay, you're giving a skewed or a proprietary definition that is not accurate. Okay, so faith is a synonym for belief, trust, or confidence, or to put it more simply, faith is a positive attitude that a proposition is the case. Okay, now people will use it in different ways in different contexts. Right now, sometimes people qualify that by saying blind faith. Right. Well, if faith was believing something without any warrant or justification, why would somebody talk about blind faith? Wouldn't that be redundant? Okay. So when faith is used, okay, in the English language, it can be used either within or within a religious context. Okay. So faith in the Bible, or even outside the Bible, means to believe, have a positive attitude that a proposition is the case. And depending on the user, it's referring to either with or without context. Okay.
Okay. But if it's
Anything else?
subjectively proven, then it's not a positive belief. I mean, you don't believe that you need water to survive. You know it for a fact.
Somebody can have a positive attitude that a proposition is the case for either no reason at all or for reasons giving warrant and justification. You understand?
Sure, I feel like you're missing the point, but it's okay. So we can debate on
Okay,
the first premise.
you know what? Screw you. You're God. You're an idiot.
Why are you
You're not
crashing out,
missing the
man?
point.
Calm down.
Yeah, I'm not. Okay, there we go again. What a bunch of sleazebags people like this are. Nobody's crashing out. Okay? What you were doing is you were trying to, in a passive aggressive way, be deceptive and evasive to what I was saying to you. So screw you. All right, I'll be back in a few minutes, okay?
Yeah. Finally, the realism that I have in mind is a repudiation of the contemporary realism of the politician and the businessman. The realism of supposedly realistic politics and business is skepticism. It is a concentration of fact as value. It rejects all truth and advocates the primacy of economic utilitarianism. It applies the criteria of success, usefulness, and interest. This kind of realism is a definitive absence of reality, for it sees only what is immediate and it sees this only in an extremely limited sector, what is before one's nose. When this realism gains ground, its meaning for the businessman is that he should make as much money as possible without regard to the reality of those around him, nor to the consequences of his attitude, nor to his own reality. This is why the capitalist is so stupid. What then does it mean for the politician? It means that he must stay in power and that he thus regards political maneuvers and combinations as the essential thing to the neglect of the general context. This realism is a complete failure to understand political reality in the full sense. Having made these negative delimitations, we must now ask what a realistic attitude means from a positive standpoint. It contains three elements. First, it means considering the facts and accepting them as they are, in spite of ideologists who say that we can never grasp a fact because there is no such thing as a fact. The whole of science rises up against this philosophical illusion, who argue that facts exist only within a system. It means accepting the facts for what they are in all their dimensions and in their global totality without denying, either through forgetfulness or for convenience, any of their forms or perspectives. For each fact opens up several possibilities, and this future dimension has also to be taken into account. Do we have similarity here to the scientific method? Assuredly, but with the difference that the scientific observer tries to stay out of the game. He tries to get the most precise and purest possible data. But in ethics, since we deal with the political, sociological, and economic facts about man, and the personal, domestic, and professional facts, it is not our concern to observe facts in a disinterested and artificially isolated way. In this sphere, reality is not truly known unless one is a participant in it. One cannot try to stay outside. One has to try things out with all one's being, with mind, emotions, and flesh. This is what yields a true relation to reality. Without this involvement, there is no knowledge. When reality is made abstract or is merely considered, it is not taken seriously. What we are defining here is an attitude of life. Realism, as I understand it, is not a game or a luxury, it is a necessity. I have in mind the traditional attitude of the peasant to nature. He is defeated if he does not participate in the rhythm of nature or accept the reality of nature as it presents itself to him. The second essential aspect of realism is that, accepting reality for what it is, we do not view it as more than it is. We take reality seriously and participate in it. We tend to merge into it, to overestimate it. To champion reality alone, as in theories of involvement or historical necessity, and to make fact of the real into a value or criterion, taking reality as it is means refusing to let it be a value or criterion. Reality is not a value which allows us to judge action. This is one of the errors of Marxism, before which we have to bow and to which we must submit. So he's just saying that we can't get an ought from an is, basically. Fact, as we have often said, is not a criterion of truth. To think that it is one of the most serious intellectual mistakes of our time. Fact and truth belong to two different orders. On the other hand, they are not strangers to one another. They unite, or can do so, in a man. Hence, realism does not presuppose a primacy of matter or efficacy. To believe this is a renunciation of man himself, who, on this view, obeys what is not a decision for his life. Furthermore, through this confusion of fact and truth, through the transformation of fact into a value, we are finally led in most cases to a negation of fact since fact, when concretely present, cannot have in effect the appearance of a good or a value. Marxism again offers a good example. The desire to observe facts leads to a system which veils all reality. To make a fact a criterion means its denial as fact. For me, simple, everyday reality is a given factor, a presence that precedes my own, a nexus of situations and relations to which, as men, we have to take a stance, to act, and to decide. Hence, reality is always a resistance, opposition, and contradiction. It is resolved neither by denial, idealism, nor by submission. Welcome, Papa.
Oh, my bad. What's up, man?
Oh, did you not mean to request up?
I have a question if you don't mind me asking you.
Okay.
I'm not really up. I'm a Christian. Well, I'm kind of getting back into my faith recently. So, but yeah, just on faith again, trying to get back into it. I got a background of a biomedical science researcher, so a lot of the stuff, obviously I'm trying to overcome some things that conflict when it becomes to like objective facts that we can see now and like my biblical, I guess, beliefs. So one thing I would ask you is, here's an example, I guess, and how I would ask how you overcome these. So right now, currently, there's no like archaeological evidence for the Old Testament's exodus of Moses and Israelite slaves or Israeli slaves in ancient Egypt. We basically take that story based off like biblical history. However, let's say something comes in the future where we can say, hey, we have like a lot of evidence in order to say like archaeologically, no, there was no Israeli slaves in ancient Egypt. There was no mass exodus, nothing like that. How would you, I guess, contend with archaeological evidence versus like biblical, I guess, belief?
Okay, so because the Bible speaks with like the divine authority of God, it's the word of God.
Mhm.
If like human evidence disagrees with what the Bible says, then that's a problem for the human. It's not a problem for God.
Sure. So I would guess. So even if there was like we have like a ton of archaeological evidence that would all say no, this didn't happen, we would have to kind of nut on that evidence until it matches biblical belief.
Human evidence is always going to be fallible, but the word of God is infallible. So you can't like it's impossible to use human evidence to contradict the Bible. It doesn't make it wouldn't make any sense because
This is what people say like flat Earth and stuff like that. Which hopefully you don't believe the Earth is flat, right?
Yeah, I don't.
Okay.
So, but the Bible, the true statements of the Bible would be the necessary foundation to have any evidence at all. So it wouldn't make sense to have evidence that contradicts the Bible because the Bible's necessary for evidence.
So the Bible's necessary. So really, we're talking about like archaeology, or not really science, or it's still scientific, I guess, but we're talking about like archaeology, right?
Any evidence.
Would you apply this to any field of science?
Any evidence, the Bible would be necessary for any evidence, any fact. So you can't use facts to disprove the Bible. It would be a contradiction.
Sure. So when we find evidence that points to something scientific, I guess in our reality now, that's not mentioned in the Bible. We would say, hey, we can trust this evidence. We can say, hey, this evidence leads us to what we know of the natural world.
If the scientific claim doesn't contradict what the Bible says, then we can believe.
We can shape our natural world beliefs based on that, right?
Yeah, but you always have to realize the limitations, right? That science could always be wrong and stuff like that.
Sure. So science doesn't make definitive claims. Science makes evidential claims.
It's called a provisional truth. But the Bible wouldn't be a provisional truth; it'd be an absolute truth. So you can't like contradict the Bible, which is an absolute truth, with a provisional truth.
Sure. So you're saying while we have good understandings of the natural world because of the methodologies that science points us to, whenever these methodologies conflict with biblical, I guess, claims, then we need to. I don't want to use the word ignore because that makes it sound like I'm just like shitting on you. We need to reinterpret the way that we are looking at evidence that contradicts that of the Bible.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's nothing wrong with that, right? That's fine, but we just need to realize that humans can make mistakes and God can't. So,
I mean, I think, I don't know. I guess I would disagree. Like I said, coming from a biomedical background, One thing that I've heard is like the making of the world. So like when Genesis, the story of Genesis, God made the world in 7 days, something like that. It's that I've heard good arguments even for like literary style where day didn't mean day in the exact way that we interpret day to be. However, but the order in which
I think that's compromise. That's compromising. That's people trying to make the Bible fit the scientific story.
Oh, so you think that day did mean day, and so then like actual 24 hours?
Yes, obviously, yeah.
Oh.
There's no reason to think otherwise.
Okay. Are you? If you, do you mind me asking? Are you a biblical or I don't know what it's called? Like you interpret scripture to be literal?
I mean,
Every scripture, or it can anything be like poetic?
It depends on context, but I would take Genesis to be literal for the most part.
Okay. All right. Well, I guess I don't have much of anything more. But yeah, man. Appreciate it. Happy Easter. God bless you.
All right. Happy Easter. Yeah, it's pretty simple. Just if human evidence disagrees with what the Bible says, then that's a problem for the human, not for God. It's pretty simple.
Hello.
Welcome, Calmec. What would you like to say?
Can you prove that the world has 5,000 years?
Well, I just believe what the Bible says. So.
Okay, but the Bible says that, and you're saying Christianity is objectively
The
proven?
Bible doesn't say explicitly how old the Earth is, but some estimations place it at like 6,000, 7,000 years or something like that.
Okay, can you even with Christianity say me how old is the Earth? Because with science we can.
I just told you. I just answered that question.
He just answered you. Based upon the genealogies that we have, if we calculate the genealogies, we have roughly about 6,000 to 7,000 years old from the Christian or biblical perspective.
Can you actually prove that?
It's in the Bible.
What do you mean by prove? Do you think
explain
how? Listen to me. Okay, so when we look at the Christian worldview and the Bible as a composite whole, it speaks authoritatively on all that it affirms to be true. The Bible makes it very clear that God made the world, the earth, and the universe in 6 days, and that therefore the universe is not billions of years old. Now, the fact that this has gained enormous popularity in a world that has turned its back on the God of the Bible, so what? It doesn't make it true.
You haven't proved anything.
Okay, dude, listen to me. You and I are at different levels here. You're totally clueless. Okay, do you understand? Does science prove anything?
Have you proved anything?
Goodbye. We're done.
Real mature, Calvin.
I'm not going to deal with people who are brazenly choosing to be village idiots.
Yo.
Welcome.
What's up? So, I don't know how this works. So, like, I'm just gonna go through the bullet points here.
We'll just go.
So, Christianity is. I got you.
Yeah.
Christianity is objectively proven.
Correct.
I definitely do believe that it has been proven on countless occasions. Also believe that there were a lot of books written in a bunch of different perspectives that all lead to one point, that there is a God and that he is all our gods, right?
No, I'm removing you because you have an obscene profile picture. Goodbye.
Did you say he has an obscene profile picture?
Yeah.
I didn't even notice.
Yeah. It said "Don't be," and he had a picture of a rooster and a lollipop.
Okay.
I I don't take kindly to people who have obscene.
I think he was promoting. It sounded like he was promoting some like universalism, that there's like all religions are pointing towards the one God. All religions are true. They're just different perspectives of the same God. Common, we already talked to you, and you got kicked, didn't you? Or did you talk to me, or did you talk to Darth? Did you talk to me? Maybe you can talk to Darth, but you're not gonna last long. Are you there, Darth? Oh, I don't think you talked to this guy. I can't remember. Oh, you did talk to Darth. Well, then you're already done. You're already done, man. You're done. Lowell here is in this book. He makes a critique on capitalism.
Okay, hey, listen, dudes. If you start lying in the chat, you're going to get muted or blocked. Okay. So stop with the teenage taunting. You're going to get instantly muted.
Lowell makes a critique on capitalism that says it becomes about like numbers. Let's see here. What does he say? So for the businessman, it's all about he should make as much money as possible without regard to the reality of those around him, nor the consequences of his attitude, nor to his own reality. This is why the capitalist is so stupid. I think that's true. I think we become focused so much on efficiency and making money, and that's the goal, and we forget about like humanity.
Well, what we're talking about is people pursuing their own self-interest in a general way. Okay, and when we let people do that, then prosperity comes about, and then because prosperity increases, then we can in turn about help those people who are unfortunate or needy. But when you have an economy or a system that doesn't reward people for the pursuit of their own personal interests, then you just have stagnation, and you don't have prosperity, and then you have a great disparity between the haves and the have-nots, because in those systems like socialism and communism, those people are always going to be pursuing their self-interest. That's why they're a member of, let's say, the Communist Party or the Socialist Party.
That's his critique. He offers a critique of Marxism right after he critiques capitalism, and he says they have no value to judge action, so that they make the Izzat fallacy in Marxism, where they try to derive.
Take a look at the video. Take a look at the short video where Phil Donahue interviews the great economist Morton.
Your mic is really messy. It's like,
yeah, I'm outside at the wind.
Yeah.
What is his name? He was an atheist, but he was a great conservative economist. Milton Friedman.
Yeah.
And, Donahue asked him about, we have this disparity between the haves and the have-nots. It should, isn't the idea like communism or Marxism good, where we can level everything? And Milton Friedman brilliantly slays Donahue, who recently died, and he said, do you think that the commissars in the Communist Party aren't communists because they're not trying to pursue their own personal interests? Okay. And he goes, everybody believes in capitalism, even the communists do. It's just the question is, who is going to control the capital? Is it going to be, the state? Or is it going to be individuals trying to pursue their own personal interests? And when they do and they prosper, then they can benefit people far and wide.
Well, the benefit of that is the idea is that there's no consolidated power, and that the power is spread out among various groups.
We're not talking about unrestrained capitalism. People going and ruin ecosystems and things like that. But the point is, free enterprise and private ownership, okay, in an economic system has done more good for more people over a longer period of time than any other system in human history.
He says here.
Why do you think people flock to the United States?
He says Marxism again offers a good example. The desire to observe facts leads to a system which veils all reality. To make fact a criterion means its denial as a fact. What are we saying there? That when we make fact the very criterion of what a fact is, that's a denial of fact. When you try to turn facts into a system that explains everything, you actually end up hiding reality instead of revealing it. So Marxism started with the goal that sounds noble and smart. Let's look at the real facts of life, especially economic struggles, and build a system that explains society and helps improve it. But Ellul says something surprising. By turning those facts into a total system, Marxism actually stops seeing the facts clearly. Why? Because once you build a big, all-encompassing system like Marxism, you stop seeing facts as they really are. You only see it through the system's filter. So imagine you put on a red tinted glasses. At first you just want to see better, but pretty soon everything looks red, even things that aren't. This is what happens when you make facts serve a system. You start twisting or ignoring parts of reality that don't fit. So the irony is that Marxism said, let's be realistic and focus on facts. But Ellul says, when you make facts the ultimate rule...
Marx was a bum. He was an absolute bum of a human being, okay? He was an atheist and evolutionist.
Well, this is exactly what Peterson would say. Like, the facts interpret themselves. And he says, when you make fact the ultimate rule, you stop treating it like a fact and you turn it into a tool for pushing your system. That means it's no longer just a fact. They're no longer observing an
Karl Marx did unimaginable damage to the world in the 20th century with his ridiculous atheistic evolutionary theories. The destruction of lives, the destruction of prosperity and well-being.
He says when you treat facts like well, this isn't just Marxism. When you treat facts like tools to prove your system, they stop being facts and become propaganda. True realism means letting facts be what they are, even if they don't fit your big idea. I think that's what faith is about, is accepting God's truth as it flashes forth and not like having your preconceived ideas change what God says. So faith is about like letting go of your confirmation bias. I think I'm getting kind of hungry. I think I'm gonna make lunch.
Okay.
Or I might just end. Thanks for coming. Happy Easter. He is risen.